What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Moto Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Nesler. We come to you each and every week to talk to you about the business of Moto. Guests in the industry that have done incredible things, guests in the industry that are building incredible things, and sometimes even special guests from outside the industry that can bring you some incredible knowledge to help you build your Moto career. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Nesler. We got a great episode for you today. Before we dive in, just want to give a shout out to the people that make the show possible. Obviously, RacerX, racerxonline.com/Moto Marketing to subscribe or renew. Always have a lot of great content coming out that you get exclusive to the online subscription or the print issue, so be sure to check that out. And thanks to our friends at 100%. Everybody knows them. Most people have used them at some point in their career. 100% is the unprecedented global leader in moto goggles, but they make a lot more these days. Mountain bike gear, helmets, protection, sport performance glasses, technical fleece and jackets, premium t-shirts, anything you want to look good on and off the track. 100% has something for you, so be sure to check out their entire line at 100%, and check them out. And last but not least, our friends over at Michelin. Michelin bicycle tires, man. We use them on the Impakt, Michelin, Walmsley Cycles, EMTB team. Whether you're doing downhill, e-biking, road biking, BMX, whatever it is, Michelin bicycle tires has you covered, so be sure to check them out. Hey, I've got somebody I think y'all are going to be excited to hear from today. Somebody I've wanted to have on for quite some time, and man, just an interesting journey this person has had as far as being a professional athlete and now transitioning into a really, really unique role with Wasserman, working behind the scenes with some of the top athletes today. I'm excited to have him on. We got Jacob Hayes with us today, man. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. I know it was a little bit of confusion. I was supposed to be on a couple weeks ago and just ended up getting mixed up in some meetings. So I appreciate you guys being patient with me and then getting me on the show.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Look, I know you're rolling with Lucas and all the stuff you guys have going on. So I know your guys' schedule is crazy. So I appreciate it, man. Honestly, I didn't realize you were with Wasserman until we were getting Lucas on the show, and you dove in and really played a big role in just coordinating that. And that's when it kind of clicked that this is what you were focused on right now as far as your career. So we'll get to that in a minute. I'm sure it's exciting. You have a lot of cool things going on. It's allowing you to still stay involved in the sport. But man, you've always been one of the more popular riders. I mean, you've got this relationship with Daniel Blair, and that puts you in the media a lot. You've had, really good results on the track. Just charisma, and you're a fan favorite, man. Everybody likes Jacob Hayes, and obviously you're a favorite topic on Pulp, which always brings exposure. So, man, talk to us about your career. We'll keep it kind of related back to what you're doing now professionally, but not everybody goes from amateur to professional, let alone successfully transitions into a off-the-track professional career after moto. So take us a little, I guess, back to the Loretta's days, wherever you want to start with there, and just walk us through your transition from amateur to professional, and then kind of your abbreviated version of your professional career, just to get us caught up a little bit.
Ooh, this is going to be a long story. I hope you guys
it's all good, man.
got some time. Yeah, I hope you guys got some time. But no, I started racing when I was 7 years old, and it was just something that I always loved, right? I rode with my dad in the backyard. I went to hare scramble races, which are technically considered GNCCs now. So I did that growing up, and it was just something that I could cling to and get on a dirt bike and ride and enjoy things like that, and just kind of take you away from that everyday life. And as a kid, there was nothing better, right? You walked into school and you're like, yeah, I ride dirt bikes. And everyone's like, oh, really? Wow, okay. So just growing up, being at the amateur races, I started off sucking. Yeah, it wasn't any good. Went to Mini-O's and the World Mini Grand Prix. And gosh, I think a couple of the years I didn't even qualify for the main events, right? So it was tough. And then I went to Loretta's in the years may be off, but I went to Loretta's in 2003, 2004, and had some decent rides. I think I was inside the top 10, but nothing special. And then had a great opportunity to get in with Zach Osborne. He had a farm up in Abingdon, Virginia, and I got to train with him in the end of 2005, the end of 2004, leading into 2005, and stayed there pretty much for a whole year. My mom and dad dropped me off and said, "Good luck." It was kind of like a sink or swim thing, and there was a bunch of guys there. It was me, Zach, just a bunch of guys were there, and it was a great year just of learning and growing and becoming a little bit tougher, right? Because mom and dad baby you a little bit, so when you're on your own, you gotta fend for yourself, and that led into me winning my first Loretta's title in 2005 on a 65, and that's kind of where it all took off, right? I got a Fox ride, I got a big KTM Orange Brigade ride, so that kind of jump started my career right there in 2005, and from there, I don't really think I missed the podium many times at Loretta's. I was always very successful, and that transitioned me into a Team Green ride, which also led into another title in 2009, which was big for me. That was probably my turning point when I really knew, hey, this is something that I can do for a living, right? I was up against Bogle, Savacci, Jesse Nelson, Kyle Peters, those kinds of guys. So was able to get that title for Team Green, which was big. I really focused on that. So 2009 was like, hey, I can make a run at this and be a professional and be on a factory team, and was just trying to transition into that in 2010 and 2011. I got bumped up early to the A class. I kind of pointed out of the B class, so to say. So I raced A in 2010 with Jason Anderson and Ian Treadle and Gannon Audette and all those guys. And I was young. I had the speed, but kind of was up and down results. And then the next year, raced Loretta's and got second. So my last 2 years weren't great, but they weren't bad either, right? It wasn't something where I was lacking results. I was still on the podium. Yeah. So just at the end of 2011, I remember having a conversation with Ryan Holiday at Loretta's like it was yesterday, and he's like, hey, I don't think there's going to be an opening on Mitch's team. Maybe you could go to Arenacross and race for the Babbitt's team. And at that time, I think my dad was like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that.
Is that disappointing? So. I mean, obviously, I'm the furthest thing from ever being a professional motocross athlete. So I've always kind of wondered that, like, Arenacross, I watch it. I love that sport, and it's a cool series. But is that a series that nobody ever really wants to be in? Was that a big bummer to hear that? And you're like, I don't want to have anything to do with Arenacross, or is it kind of it's at that point it's like, hey man, any type of racing is good, and maybe it's a stepping stone to get me to where I want to go.
To be honest, I had not even thought of Arenacross. I didn't even watch it. Yeah. I watched Supercross and Motocross. That's that vision that I saw, right? Like I saw, in 2005 when I won my title, I saw Ryan Villapoto go from Loretta's and then move up to the pro ranks and have all the success he had. So that was like, that's the path that I foresaw myself taking. And it was definitely a bummer. It was a punch in the gut, but what was I going to do? Give up? I thought about it, right? Definitely thought about hanging the boots up. I went and raced for Al Biker on Dragon Fuel's KTM in 2012. I did probably a handful of outdoor nationals, and that was an experience to say the least. I think my best finish was 13th at Redbud. So nothing to write home about at all. My fitness wasn't there. I just didn't have a program, right? I went from being an amateur racing 5-6 lap motos and then just trying to make it work. So 2011, transitioning into the pros, and then 2012 racing a handful. Ended up hopping off the Dragon Fuels KTM, and a buddy bought me a bike in 2013, and I tried a couple outdoor nationals on a 450, and again, that wasn't working. You can't just show up and expect to do a 35-minute moto with no base. So I remember telling someone at the end of 13, I was like, this is just not what I saw for myself. I kind of envisioned a different path. And if this is the way it's going to go, I don't have any money. I don't have a ride. Like, how am I going to get to these races and potentially make a living out of this? So I was like, I think I should just go to college. I think I should just be done with this. And he was like, look, I've got a good group of friends that could maybe get you a bike. And we looked at the Arenacross schedule. So this is where it gets interesting, right? So we looked at the Arenacross schedule, and the first five were very close to North Carolina. I could drive to each one of them. One was in my hometown in Greensboro. So I just put a bone stock Kawasaki together, put graphics on the number plate. I think at the first round I still had Fox gear from 2012 that had KTM on it. So I showed up at Worcester, Massachusetts in 2014. Bone stock bike. I think there was a little bit of motor work that my friends did, but just
Wow.
I mean, it was pretty much all hands on deck at that point. Like, I mean, I was swinging for the fences. If I could do good, then that was what I was going for, which I still believed in myself. It wasn't like I didn't have the speed or I didn't have the capabilities of doing that stuff. So going there, I think I did an interview with someone on Racer X, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go bang bars with the big boys. And I remember Tyler Bowers reading it, and he did an interview before the night even started. And he was like, yeah, Jacob Hayes thinks he's going to come bang bars with the big boys, and he's got another thing coming. So the first night, it was there was a lot of banging bars, that's for sure. But I was ready for it. I was good with it. I got kind of knocked around, but I got third on the podium my first night. So against Tyler and Zach Ames and just all those big names in Arenacross, right? So I was just like, just a young 20-year-old star kid. I was just like, heck yeah, this is awesome, right?
Yeah.
So night two comes around because we race Friday and Saturday, and then the expectations come, right? I'm like, okay, now I can really do good. So qualify first in practice. And then Tyler, I remember he was bumping me every chance he could get. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this guy everything I can handle. And I saw an opening, and I knew I was going to go down too, but I was fine with it. So I just ran into him, took us both out. And I think that set the tone quick, right? Like,
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not here to mess around. I'm not here to take junk. I'm here to battle and race you guys like I said I was. And I think no one liked it, but I think they had to respect it at that point too, right? And then that's when I met Daniel Blair. He came up to me after I took Tyler out. I went in the tunnel. I kept my helmet, my goggles on because I was like, I'm about
to get my ass kicked. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm about to get out or something like this.
Awesome.
I was just a little kid. And Daniel's like, look, I don't know who you are, but I like you, man. You have some balls for doing that. And I was like, oh, thank you. Like, okay. And just went to the first five and had just race for race, was just going for wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got my second, at the second round, got my first win. I won over Tyler. And then at my hometown race in Greensboro, I got an overall win. I went 1-2, I think, for the overall. So it was a great night for me. And then I remember having a conversation with everyone that I was involved with the motorcycle and my friends. I was like, still financially, I cannot continue to go to all these races. I mean, I think the next one was in Colorado, and I was like, I can't drive out there. So fortunately for me, Tough Honda had an opening. They just had Kyle Regal. They had an open bike. I think Teddy Mayer was supposed to race, but he was hurt. So they called me. They're like, do you want to race? And I was like, can I ride the bike? So I drove down to south of the border, which was 3 hours from my house, and hopped on the bike. And I was like, let's do it. I don't have anything to lose here. Got on the bike and just had a great season, had a great rookie season. I got second overall to Tyler. I really wanted to beat him, but looking back now, I just physically wasn't there and mentally wasn't there to take it all the way to the end. I mean, I think I finished 20 points behind him, so I kind of kept it close, but it was still it was tough. I think he won his fourth championship that year, so he was pretty good at it. And then I remember I was like, yeah, I guess I'm just going to continue doing this. I don't really know what else to do. And I didn't think for 1 second that Babbitts was going to give me a call just because how many times me and Tyler had gotten into it and things like that. So Denny Bartz called me at the end of 2014. It was like, what do you think about riding for us? I was like, I'd be honored. And that's where that journey started. Just started with them in 2015. And we all know kind of how that season ended there in Vegas. Went for the jugular on Kyle Regal. Definitely didn't pay off for me. It was looking good for a little bit, but it didn't pay off for me. It's okay. I think I learned a lot from that night. How are you supposed to live?
Right.
The saying, live and learn, if you never lived and if you never do something to learn from. So
yeah.
I learned a lot from that night. It was a big character building moment for me. And I had to swallow my pride and suck it up and say, look, I made a mistake. I went to take him out, and I did, but ended up breaking my motorcycle in the process. And a lot of people didn't know that, right? Like when I hit him, I had no idea that my motorcycle was broken at all. I thought it was fine. And then I just realized it was slowing down. And I thought there was just a mechanical, right? Because like in Arenacross, a lot happens. You have 2 main events. The bikes are hot. I mean, we had been dealing with clutches and things like that throughout the season. So a lot was going through my mind, and I just couldn't stand the fact that I had worked so hard that whole season to just lose it at the last race. So definitely threw a bad fit, and I don't recommend doing that ever. So definitely, if the kids are watching,
and you're how old at this point?
I was 21.
Yeah, so you're
21.
Yeah, so you're still. I mean, all things considered, you're still young. Like you're still, like you had said, like you probably learned a lot from that instant.
So that was home at that point. 2 years solid in Arenacross, that was home.
Right.
People were asking me to go to Supercross. Why don't you race Supercross? And I was like, why would I? Like, this is awesome. Like, this is my family. I enjoyed it. All the staff in Arenacross. Everyone put on a great show. I enjoyed my team, my teammates, my team manager. Like, it was honestly an unbelievable experience. Made a lot of money too, right? And then 2018 ended up getting the title. And that night, I remember Denny coming up to me and going, I'm proud of you. Thank you so much for, bringing a championship to this team. I knew you always had it in you, but the series is no more. And I was like, man, this is not good, because I never had really any thoughts of going to Supercross. I mean,
really? Wow.
I was a Supercross guy. Yeah,
so had that series not have come to an end, you don't think you ever even would have taken a swing at Supercross and just kept doing what you were doing until it was time to hang it up?
100%.
Yeah.
I loved it, right? Like I got ready in November, rode more in December, January through May, and then I had my summers to just kind of do as I please, right? Like, I mean, I made a good living, and with keeping costs down in North Carolina, I had my own tracks. Like, my program was good, right?
Right.
And no, I just never saw myself going. Like, yeah, did I always want to? Yes, I would be lying if I said I never wanted to race a Supercross. But financially, was I going to give up racing Arenacross and making bukus of money to go and invest in my own program for Supercross? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So in 2018, when that was done, I remember I got a call. Will Hahn put in a good word for me, so thank you, Wilbur, to go race over in Australia for Serco Yamaha. So that was a great experience. And before I left for there, Christina Denny called me with Rock River Yamaha. And she was like, what do you think about being on the team? And I was like, I mean, Rock River was not the peak, but it was just under. Sure. Like, I mean, Colton Nicholas had gone through there. Alex Martin had gone through there. Like, they were a good team to get going on. So I was like, I would be honored. So I actually signed that deal before I even left for Australia. So I knew I had a ride to come home to. So that kind of settled me mentally, and I went over there and had fun in Australia. Like, that's a beautiful place to live, and the series was great. It was a good warm up for me, but it was a big transition. I was like, okay, I'm good at Arenacross. Like, it's going to translate over to Supercross, and it did. The whoop speed was good. The rhythms and stuff like that were good, but a lot more fine detail went into Supercross, how you attack the rhythms, how you attack the corners, how you broke down the track. So my first year, I think I did great. I had a couple top fives. I was third in some heat races, and all that was great. And had a great outdoor season. I hadn't raced outdoors since 2013, so that was a journey in its own right. I got a couple top tens at WW in Southwick, which were brutal races. But yeah, just worked my way through 2019. It was a fun year. I enjoyed every minute of it. I'll be lying if there were some stressful days for sure. I was like, man, I wanted to be better, right? Yeah. I knew I could be a little bit better, but I was missing a couple fine details. And then in 2020, I ended up getting an AJE Gas Monkey ride. Mm-hmm. So got off the Rock River team and got on the Husqvarna. And I came into this season a little injured. I had dislocated my shoulder in Australia in the off season, but no excuses. Came in and had some good results. I was 6th in points, I think, when we did the first 6 West. Yep. And went into break. And then that's when COVID got going. And then, I had a big accident out here in California getting ready. I think they had just announced that we were going to go race in Salt Lake and kind of finish out the season, right? And that's when I had my big accident. And that's kind of when everything came to a quick stop. That's for sure.
So with that, was it, so obviously you're doing some pretty unique things right now with Wasserman and Myrtle and all those guys. And had you ever even thought of, life after racing at that point? Like, have you kind of thought of like, man, maybe I'd like to do this. Maybe I'd do the trainer thing. Maybe I'd do kind of behind the scenes, the agent life type thing. Or were you still so in it that you'd never even thought of anything other than doing your motos, doing your training, and trying to perform on the track?
I definitely thought about it, right? Because I realized that I wasn't making millions of dollars, right? So at that point, you're not just gonna. And I was getting older when I moved to Supercross. I was 25 years old, right? So my first year was 25, and then in 2020 I was 26. So it was definitely one of the older guys in the class. So I knew that there was going to have to be some kind of income to happen after racing.
Right.
Did I really sit down and kind of put pencil to paper? No.
Yeah.
But if I'm talking to a kid right now and mentoring these kids growing up, which is what we'll get into that. But building these relationships when you are a kid and going up to these team managers and going up to these sponsors and speaking to them face to face, let alone a text message and email. I don't want that. I want that face to face interaction, right? Because how is that going to leave that everlasting impression if you're sending a text? They don't know how for real you are. So I think that speaks volume about myself and the relationships that I built over my career in Arenacross and the 2 years that I spent in Supercross building relationships. I remember my girlfriend, well, now my fiance.
Congrats.
In 2019 at Hangtown, she's like, hey, this Australian guy's like asking me like about your lap times and stuff. And like, I don't know what to tell him. I'm like, who the heck is asking you about my lap times? And I remember, I think it happened at Paula. He was walking through the pits and she's like, that's him. And I asked my trainer and I was like, who is that? He's like, that's Lucas Myrtle. And I was like, oh, because I had heard about him, right?
Yep.
So I was like, oh, okay. So he was always coming over to the pit and speaking to me, and we became friends, right? Like we hung out and talked junk to each other, and we were making like little side bets and stuff like that. So we grew like a relationship, right?
Sure.
And I never thought anything of it. I was just like, this is a kind of pretty rad dude, like genuine guy. I get that he's an agent for the sport, but he's pretty rad.
Yeah.
And in 2020, when I was doing good and getting the top fives and things like that, I remember he came up to me at Phoenix, I believe, and was like, hey, after this first six, I want to sit down and talk to you, maybe see if I can help you. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. So at San Diego, I remember him sitting like, because as you came out of the tunnel, there was like these bleachers where you could sit, and he yelled over me. He's like, are you going to do something tonight? And I was like, yeah, just watch, just hang on. So we like I said, we were always giving each other junk. And then I went to dinner with him after that. And he was like, look, I'd love to represent you. I think you've got a great career ahead of you. And I think I could potentially help you. And I was like, okay. So I signed with Wasserman for him to represent me. And then, this is where I really take my hat off to someone like Lucas, because there was no way that he needed to help me. Right. He really didn't need to at all.
Sure.
And when COVID happened, I'm being dead honest. I cannot make this up. He would drive to my house from Newport Beach, which I lived in Corona at that time, drive to my house, hop in the van with me, and go pit board for me at the track in the scorching sun. Right? And he did that multiple times.
Which is unheard of for an agent to do anything like that. And that's something that I've noticed with his relationship with the relationship that's obviously most in the public eye is his relationship with the Lawrence brothers. But I knew that it wasn't just him treating those guys like family and then the other guys don't get the same version of Lucas. Like I don't know if maybe that's what makes him so great at his job, is he genuinely cares and he does things like goes and holds a pit board for someone like Jacob Hayes, when, like you said, like he doesn't necessarily need to represent me. Like he could probably go after some really big name guys, but I don't know, he's just he's just different than other agents from what I've heard. I don't know other agents, but we've all heard horror stories and we've heard positive things about other agents. But I feel like every story I've ever heard about Lucas is just very different than any other agent in the sport. Would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree because right there, what I just told you stands apart from anything. Like I wasn't like starstruck, but I was definitely like, wow, this guy genuinely wants to help me, right? Like he is willing to come to the track with me and do a pit board when he technically doesn't have to. So that really spoke volumes for me, right? Like his character was insane. So I ended up getting hurt, right? And you couldn't come to see me. Like he could not come see me in the hospital because it was COVID and they wouldn't let anyone in the hospital. So I was there for like 6 days, and he came to see me right when I got out and was just always checking on me. And I was like, man, this guy, like, this is a good dude. So going through that injury, I thought it was going to be a pretty quick, like I had broken my femurs before. I broken my left and my right. So, but this one was far worse with being a compound fracture and things like that. So I got it fixed. I thought it was going to be 3-4 months, non-weight bearing, and just get back into physical therapy. After 4 months, I was told that my screws had broken, the plate had broken on my femur, everything was not looking good. My bone wasn't healing. I potentially had a bone infection. So I had to go switch doctors to a reconstructive orthopedic specialist, completely go in there, do another surgery to see if I had any bone infection. So it was a bone graft, or a bone biopsy, not a bone graft. I'm sorry, bone biopsy. Came back, waited like 2 weeks for that to realize it wasn't infected. So then he had to go back in there, remove all the hardware, realign me. My bone was growing bow-legged. So like just restart the whole process over again. So it was about a year. I got hurt May 14th of 2020. I believe I was released to ride again April 20th of 2021. So it was pretty much a full year off. And in that time, me and Lucas are still talking, and he was nice enough to take me to several Supercrosses. And I had already met Jet and Hunter and kind of grew a little bit of a relationship with them because I was racing Jet and Hunter. I raced Hunter in outdoors in 2019, and then I raced Jet in Supercross in 2020. Well, sometimes I was on the same track as Jet, but there was a couple times where we were close to each other. But so I kind of knew them, but just growing more in a sense of being a friend of Lucas and realizing what he did day to day, right? Because he was repping me as a client, and then I went from just being a friend. Now, I mean, I still was a client, but I was injured, but I was becoming a friend. And he took me to a lot of Supercrosses, and he just, man, one day he called me. He's like, I just going to have a hard conversation with you, like friend to friend, right? And I was like, yeah, I'll respect anything you say. And he's like, I'm just going to go ahead and be straight up, shoot it down the middle. I do not think that if we get you back on a motorcycle, that we can get you to the level that you need to be to make a living at racing a dirt bike.
Wow.
And that hurt, right? Like it was the truth, but it hurt.
Yeah. Had you accepted that at that point, or was it like, no, I don't want to believe that? Or deep down, did you kind of know, like, yeah, that's where I'm at too?
I didn't want to believe it at all, right? Like I did not want to hear that. And I listened, right? Like I wanted to hear his full opinion because I told him just to give it to me right down the middle. And I realized when I went for my second surgery that this was not looking good for me because I was on that bubble of being the privateer guy, maybe getting a shot to be a factory rider. Like I was on that bubble. Yep. Like I think when I got hurt, Lucas was talking to Mitch about maybe me getting on the outdoor program for him. So like I was on that bubble. And when I went for my second surgery, I was like, this is not good. Like I've been off too long now. And our sport is it's who is in front of your face at that moment, right? So you're forgot about relatively quickly. So when he had that conversation with me, he was like, look, I'm just telling you, I foresee your future somewhere else. I think you have more in you. I think you're a very intelligent young man. I think you have another path out of you. And I was like, I wonder what he means by that. So he's like, just think on it. You're going to have this hard conversation with yourself. Like, these are going to be sleepless nights for you, which they were. So I was going through the recovery process, and we were talking, and I just told him, I was like, what do you mean by that? Like, what did you mean that you think I have another path? He's like, Jacob, like, the relationships that you have with some of the people are incredible. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, you have a real gift on speaking and growing a relationship and managing that relationship. And that's a lot of what I do, is what he said. And I was like, as an agent? He's like, yeah. And he said, what do you think about coming and helping me and learning to be an agent of the sport? And I was like, wow, never thought about that.
See, as a fan, when I hear the word agent, as a fan, like, that's one of the most sexy, like, in any sport. Like, if you're an agent, like, that's damn cool. So as a fan, I'm like, man, that, like, when I hear mechanic, I'm like, nah, I don't want anything to do with that. But, like, agent, like, man, that's a damn cool job. So when you heard that, was that kind of as a rider, are you like, yeah, that's that'd be pretty sick. Like, I don't want to be a goggle guy or a dude representing a brand at the racetrack, but man, an agent, like, that would be cool. Were you intrigued by it too, or as a racer, had you never really thought of it that way?
Oh no, I was like, wait, are you for real? Like, are you serious? I just couldn't believe that after all these years that he thought of myself as a potential agent, years down the road, right? He was like, obviously you have a lot to learn. You're going to be going from a full-time racer to learning everything there is about being an agent of the sport. So I was like, okay. He's like, I need to get you in touch with my boss. We need to have basically a sit-down meeting and see if this is something that is going to work. So during this whole process, I'm still trying to recover because I need to get my life back on track, right? Like, I still need to be walking. I still need to be functionable. I'm a person that loves being fit, so I needed to get myself back into a routine. So while this is all going down, I'm trying to ride and do some things like that. And I think the meeting got set, and I was nervous. I was nervous, and he was like, I'm going to introduce you to Travis Clark, Scott Lindley, and then it'll be myself and you, and we're all going to go to dinner. And I remember when Travis showed up, I was like, oh boy, here we go. Like, I mean, I felt like I was on the gate of Anaheim 1, and I'm like, why are you so nervous? Like, I really had nothing to lose, right? Like, I was just going to be honest and tell the guy exactly how I felt,
sure,
which I was. And he asked me, he's like, why should we hire you? Like, what would you bring to our program? And I just told him, I was like, look, I've been in the motocross, supercross industry my whole life. I know a lot of people. I have grown my relationships over the years, and I think I have some really strong bonds with a lot of people. And I think I can continue to grow my portfolio with all these people. And years down the road, I think I could be a pretty darn successful agent for you guys and bring Wasserman, some money. And I remember leaving that meeting, and I was like, look, I told him everything I could. I said, look, I'm coming in as a sponge. I do not know anything about this side of the sport. I know about the sport. Right. I know about family. I know about all the sacrifice that goes into racing a dirt bike, but I do not know the business side. And I said, it's going to take me years, and I'm going to look at you guys if I end up getting hired, as I'm going to soak up all the information I can. My attention will go from not being a professional supercross and motocross racer. It'll be becoming a sports agent, and I'll put everything I have into that, and I will do whatever it takes to climb my way to the top. So I remember the next day Lucas called me and was like, dude, Travis really likes you. And I was like, awesome. Wow, really? Yeah. And I was like, okay, like, what do you think? He's like, I think you have a shot. And I was like, no way. So I know Travis reached out to some other people like Donnie Emler and things like that, and just for some recommendation. And Donnie was like, dude, that's a great kid. He's got a great head on his shoulders, and I think you could take him far. So I think right before the national started, Travis called me. I was riding at State Fair where I got hurt that day. So it's kind of weird psychology thing or whatever. So he called me. He's like, congratulations, welcome to Wasserman. And I was like, wow, like, this happened.
How'd that feel? Because like at that point you're like, okay, my my career as a professional athlete's over, but at that point, had you kind of accepted it and you were just excited about the potential of what this future held? Like, were you jacked to get that call?
Oh, I mean, when he popped up on my phone, I swiped that thing as quick as I could. Hey, Travis, how are you? And he said, congratulations, welcome to Wasserman. And I got chills just because it was like, I could not even believe that I was in a position to be speaking to someone as successful as he was and as successful as Lucas was, and to even be considered for an opportunity like that.
Yeah.
So my first race with Wasserman, I remember Lucas was unable to go to High Point and last year. And he's like, yeah, good luck. You gotta look after Jet, Hunter, Joe.
So
Volin.
At that point, are you quote unquote an agent at that point, or are you kind of, hey, you're gonna shadow Lucas? You're not technically an agent yet, but we're grooming you to be that. Or did they send you out there as, hey man, you're an agent today? Like what was that current model at that time?
So I was brought on as a consultant of the business, right? And to grow and to learn. I am Lucas's understudy. No, I was not sent out there to go, hey, you're an agent, go get them. Travis said, like, this is going to take, a couple of years to get you comfortable in this position to where you feel confident enough to go up to a family and say, hey, I can truly make a difference and help you guys. So it was strictly learning, and it still is right now. I'm still in that learning stage. And as each day goes by, I learn more and more and more, and they throw more tasks on me, and that's better. Like, sure. I'm able to handle a lot more now than I was last year when I got hired, which is good. I'm growing, and I just had my year review. Things are going good. We kind of carved out the next couple of years, so it's looking really good. But no, right now I am sitting in on all these meetings, sitting in on all these emails, all the Zoom calls, all the monthly check-ins with Wasserman, meeting all the higher ups, just doing all the day-to-day things, the email chains, the expense reports. Like, a lot goes into it, right? And sure. Managing a rider, I fall victim of this, and I tell Lucas this all the time. Like, I just thought you made a couple phone calls as an agent, and then you just kind of hung up. Yeah. And Lucas is extremely hands-on, and I love his style, right? Because it's a family. You guys are in a relationship. Yep. You truly want to make a difference for that kid and that individual. So when we go and help Jet or Hunter or Joe Shimoda, Max Volin, we have the Gordon brothers, Chance Hymas. Like, we truly want to make a difference with these kids, and we give everything we can to them. That way they don't go to sleep at night thinking, this guy's not really doing much, right? Yeah. I love going to the track and watching Chance or watching Landon Gordon and Revan Gordon. Those are our two amateur kids that we just picked up. So I love helping Max Fulton. Like, these guys, I truly do like seeing succeed, and it goes a lot more into than just making a couple phone calls. Like, sure. A lot of puzzle pieces are moving.
So one of the things, and I talked to Lucas about this when we had him on the show, man, what he's doing with the Lawrence brothers and really even Joe, like, I think the comparison that I'd made was it feels very Formula One-ish as far as just their brand and like positioning their brand and how they're being presented to the public. Like with the Lawrence brothers, the Q&A, like fan interaction thing you guys did at the beginning of the year. And I know Joe, English isn't his first language, but just even his, so maybe he's not as much in the public as like Jet, but even just how he is, represents himself on social media and things like that. It just feels like a step above, and this is no knock on this rider, but like a Justin Cooper, to where you really don't hear anything from Justin Cooper. And I know he's very introverted, so maybe it's not the best comparison. Have you learned a lot from Lucas as far as like, hey, we want to really give the fans a different level of maybe access, or just we want them to really see these athletes at a different capacity than they've ever seen, the Carmichaels or the Villapotos or the Dungies. Like, I feel like that's why the fans love your guys' riders as much as they do. They're out there at a level that a lot of riders probably don't care to be, or maybe they're just not represented in a way that they have the opportunity to be. So talk to me a little bit about that as far as what you've learned from how to coach and position these riders in a position to succeed in a social media first world that we live in today.
Yeah, I definitely take my hat off to Lucas on how he is helping guide Joe and Hunter and Jet and Max Folan. You know what I mean? Like Max is looked this year like with the Fox and factory KTM and things like that, and he's unfortunately had a little bit of a tough start to the season, right? Like he got hurt at round one, but looking for him to come back and do really, really well. It is. When I watch these guys, I actually feel like I get closer to them as they do their interviews, as the social media stuff comes through, because that's what Lucas focuses on, is the interaction and giving back to the core fans, right? Like had a ride day at Dade City, and I couldn't believe the turnout that Hunter and Jet got, and just a free ride day, giving back to the core fans that are watching this sport. Like we represent AJ Catanzaro. Like he is going and doing these riding schools all over the world. And these are the people that are paying full retail for pipes, and they're stoked on it. We are trying to give back to those guys and make sure that those guys feel like we're making a difference, right? Like, yes, winning races is rad, and that's ultimately how you get paid. But that long-lasting ever impression that you give that fan makes the world a difference. You like Jet going and giving 10 minutes of his time at an outdoor to sign a bunch of autographs, or Hunter or Max or Joe. Like Joe does really, really well with interacting on the podium. Like I saw him last year at outdoors, like going around and speaking and shaking hands and things like that. That goes a long way, right? Because at the end of the day, those fans are going to take you and grow you where you want to be. It is all about that fan base, because I think we realized super quick when COVID happened, there's no fans. Like it's not the same.
Right.
It really is. Like we want to see those fans. And I think it speaks a lot how Lucas does that. And definitely like I'm learning that with working with Landon and Revan Gordon. Like had an Alpine Star shoot the other day at Paul, and we were doing some interview stuff. And I noticed right away, like they said something. I was like, no, we're going to redo that. This is how I want you guys to say it. Right. Like it's all about how it's presented and how it comes across, because yes, these guys are athletes, but they are essentially the face of the sport too, because that's how even more kids get into it, because these guys are their heroes. And like when I watch my hero on TV, I want to feel like I'm close to my hero, and I like want to do what my hero's doing. Right. So trying to manage those relationships and just baby step them into being, what they are today.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really cool about your guys' style with your athletes is how much your athletes put themselves out there, because I think the thing with our sport, and it's probably not just our sport, it's maybe many sports or every sport, we're very quick to judge and form an opinion of a rider. And when a rider is focused on the riding and you only get a little bit of their personality, and maybe it's a pissed off tweet that they put out, or maybe it's a disgruntled podium interview, or just their lack of result, you start to form your own opinion of these riders. And when they're not putting themselves out there, your only opinion of them is the very little that you gather. So a very good example of this is, I'll be honest, I wasn't a big fan of Austin Faulkner at all. I thought he was arrogant. I didn't think he was friendly. And this is an opinion of a guy in Morgantown, West Virginia that's never met him, and I formed that through what I see on the broadcast, or very little that you see on Twitter, or rumors about him on the podcasts. And it blew my mind how quickly my opinion of this guy changed when he started putting out his vlogs. And why it changed was because I actually got an inside look at who that dude actually is, how he and same thing with like a Justin Barsha. A lot of people had this opinion of him, and then his vlogs come out and you're like, he is totally different than how I thought. I feel like Jet never even, in a good way, stood a chance of getting this like misconception built about him, because he's always been out there, and like he very easily could be the guy to where if he wasn't out there as much as he is, people could judge him as like cocky and arrogant, and he thinks he's this badass dude, and that's not at all who he is. And we've learned that because he gave himself that chance. Like he's out there so much. So, long-winded story. How big of a role do you think, like you see a lot of these riders doing the whole rider vlog thing, and I think it's awesome because they're all so very different, whether it's a vlog or being on TikTok or Instagram. How important is that today to make sure that a rider is putting themselves out there for the sheer reason that they're going to have some type of judgment formed about them, and you guys probably know that, and you want the fans to form the fun-loving, like, we want to be on that guy's team judgment, as opposed to, screw that guy, I don't like him, and you're completely wrong in forming that judgment. So how big of a role do you feel the social medias that are available today play in that?
I think it goes with saying you got to know your rider and your athlete. And you got to market them in the way that best fits their style and their technique. Max is different than Jet.
Yep.
Joe is different than Jet. Joe is different than Hunter. You have to know exactly who you're dealing with and the demographic that they are reaching, and you have to go after that. And I think that goes into, again, knowing your athlete, knowing them inside and out. If you make a couple phone calls, you don't really know the guy. Like, you want to become, like I said, a family. Like, that's what you are. You are growing as a family together, and you guys are both working towards the ultimate goal, which is winning. Yeah. And a lot of puzzle pieces go into that, and that's with social media. That's on the track. That's off the track. Like, a lot of things go into that, and that's, like I said, knowing your athlete and knowing what demographic they are going after, because each one of them are so different in their own ways that you can't just do the same thing with every single one of them. So I think it just speaks that you're knowing your athlete and you're really putting the time in.
Man, I love that answer, because it's exactly what I've seen. Like, you don't see every single one of your guys' athletes trying to do the same stuff that you have Jet doing or what Hunter's doing. Like, Max, you guys are doing completely different things with Max, and part of me wondered, like, how do they make that decision? But you just said it. It's learning what's going to fit for what rider. You can't do with Joe Shimoda what you're doing with Jet. It's just not going to work. Joe's got a very different personality, and his culture is probably what forms that personality. So, man, it's awesome. I'm a big fan of you and what you guys are doing. And man, I'll be honest, like, so when I reached out to Lucas, you jumped in, and man, you were nothing but polite and helpful from the get-go. And that was the first interactions we'd ever had. And I was knowing you as an athlete, and I was a big fan of your come up and just really watching you. You were one of the guys that I always watched. I was super impressed with just how quickly you responded, and you're just very, very polite. And you don't always get that in this sport. And I was super impressed by that. And man, you're going to do some. You obviously have the best mentor you can have in Lucas. You're going to do some awesome things, man. Like, I'm really excited to watch the next chapter of your career unfold, and hopefully we can have you back on here in a year or so and talk about the athletes that you're representing and the things you're doing, man. Because it's to me, I'm as big of a fan as the business side of moto as I am the racing, which is why we had this show. So I'm as stoked to watch your journey now as I was when you're an athlete, man. So congrats on your engagement and also everything you've done in your career so far. And it's just the beginning, man.
No, I appreciate the kind words. That means a lot. It was, like we talked about, it's tough going from being a full-time racer and not knowing what's next. And then to be able to step into the role I am now, I'm extremely grateful. Sometimes I have to pinch myself, right? It's just like, wow, is this really happening? Am I really going to the races and helping these guys achieve the ultimate greatness, right? And that's when I just take a step back and say, listen, this is where you belong, and this is what you're meant to do. So again, I'm extremely grateful. Thank you so much for all the kind words, and I appreciate you guys having me on the show. It's been awesome. But yeah, I'm stoked to grow and continue to learn. I've got a great mentor, a great team behind me, Wasserman Media Group. They're a great group of guys. So many people over there have helped in so many different ways. So I appreciate the whole team over there. Travis, Lucas. I mean, I have great mentors. Everyone over there has been nothing but helpful and helping me grow and learn along my journey. And I have a long journey ahead of me. So yeah, again, I appreciate you guys having me on and allowing me to tell my story.
Absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure, and we'll definitely sure it's not the last time we'll be in contact with you. So, man, it's been awesome having you on. I appreciate you making time. I know how busy of a schedule you guys run, so for carving out nearly an hour's worth of time with us, man, I appreciate it. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon. And thanks for being on the show with us today.
10-4, Luke. Have a good week.
You too, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Moto Marketing Podcast. If your goal is to get real, measurable results from your marketing that will grow your company revenue, then check out how Impakt Media can get the same results that they have for Moto's most iconic brands by visiting thinkimpakt.com. That's THINKIMPAKT.com. Have a marketing question that you want answered on the show? Send your questions to questions@motomarketingpodcast.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Moto Marketing Podcast.